All right. Also, hey, let me just give you a little plug here real quick. You may have seen this. Those of you who, the eagle eyes that are watching the video stream of this program for the past few weeks have spotted a new mug on my desk. You see it right there? It is our very own stand mug, 15 ounces of American-made ceramic coffee mug. And you can get yours so that if you need a reminder every morning when you have your bold coffee to stand firm for the truth, go to TonyPerkins.com and get your own stand mug. All right. As NBC's Chuck Todd noted yesterday, President Biden has a pretty big credibility crisis on his hands. As you know, it's bad when even the legacy media can't ignore it. Well, last month, after the completion of the U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan, the president patted himself on the back for striking an ISIS-K target using an over-the-horizon system.
We will maintain the fight against terrorism in Afghanistan and other countries. We just don't need to fight a ground war to do it. We have what's called over-the-horizon capabilities, which means we can strike terrorists and targets without American boots on the ground, or very few if needed. We've shown that capacity just in the last week. We struck ISIS-K remotely, days after they murdered 13 of our service members and dozens of innocent Afghans.
But as it turns out, that strike killed 10 civilians, as the commander of the U.S. Central Command, General Kenneth McKenzie, reported on Friday.
Having thoroughly reviewed the findings of the investigation and the supporting analysis by interagency partners, I am now convinced that as many as 10 civilians, including up to 7 children, were tragically killed in that strike. Moreover, we now assess that it is unlikely that the vehicle and those who died were associated with ISIS-K or were a direct threat to U.S. forces.
And of course, that's not the only place where President Biden has gotten it so wrong. There is the migrant surge at the southern border, which the president back in March said was just a seasonal uptick.
It happens every single solitary year. There is a significant increase in the number of people coming to the border in the winter months of January, February, March. It happens every year. The reason they're coming is that it's the time they can travel with the least likelihood of dying on the way because of the heat in the desert.
Well, we've gone through winter, spring, and now summer, and the numbers have only increased, topping 200,000 the past 2 months. And now we have around 15,000 migrants under a bridge in Texas waiting to get into the U.S. under with more that's on the way behind them. Is the president hoping that no one is noticing? Well, with me now to talk about all of this and more is Congresswoman Vicki Hartzler. She is a member of the House Armed Services Committee. She represents the 4th Congressional District of Missouri. Congresswoman Hartzler, welcome back to the program.
Well, thanks, Tony. It's good to be here.
A lot to cover, and I know your plate is full. You're dealing with the National Defense Authorization Act, which is an annual event in terms of funding the military and determining some of the policy for the military. Before we get into this issue of immigration, how does that stand in terms of standing with and supporting our military with solid policy?
Well, overall, it's very good. Thanks to the Republicans, we were successful in increasing the amount of funding for our men and women in uniform. As you know, President Biden had actually in real dollars proposed a decrease in our defense spending, plus a 16% increase in all the social programs in government, but yet a decrease in defense, and zeroed out the Homeland Security budget, which as far as increases, which covers the border. So his priorities were very clear. And so there are several positive provisions in the defense bill, increase for our pay for our men and women in uniform, making sure that we have more aircraft and more ships to counter China and the other adversaries that we have. But there are some concerning provisions in there as well, including a provision that would require women and girls to have to start registering for the draft. And as I spoke in committee against this amendment, I just believe it's not necessary. This is a solution in search of a problem, really, and that There are adequate numbers of males who are already that have registered for the Selective Service. And if there was a crisis, I feel confident that enough people would volunteer and step up to meet that crisis. And we already have women serving valiantly. Over 16% of our military are women who voluntarily serve. So it's not necessary, and I think it's very concerning. So there are pieces that, in addition, I have concerns about.
Well, few have fought harder for our nation's men and women, the men and women who serve our nation in uniform, and we're grateful for your service on the Armed Services Committee. And I'm going to get to General Milley in just a moment, but I want to go to our southern border. Tomorrow, I'm going to be joined by one of your colleagues who's just returning from the border today, Congressman Biggs, who led a delegation down there as chairman of the Freedom Caucus. But what's your reaction to what's happening on our southern border?
It is sickening and it is concerning. It is totally out of hand, and our Border Patrol agents are overwhelmed. They are true heroes, but they have been abandoned by the Biden administration and this government, who's just turned a blind eye to the crisis that they have caused by inviting people to come here and saying, if you come here, then we're going to allow you to come into our country, and we're going to pay for your medical needs and your health care and your schooling, and we're going to pay for you to go wherever you want in this country. And he stopped the construction of the border security system. And we just have a crisis on our hands. I am very much supportive of legal immigration, as I know most Americans are. But to just allow anyone to come and encourage them is a really national security issue. Border Patrol has already arrested over a dozen people on the terrorist watch list from the beginning of this year. And we don't even know who the over 350,000 people are that they consider getaways. Those are just the over 1 million people that they have caught and tried to process in some way. We also have a health crisis because these individuals do not have to have the COVID vaccine, although they're forcing that on our military, forcing that on businesses and citizens of our country. But if you come over our border illegally, then you don't have to have the vaccine and you're released in our country. So there's a health crisis, there's a security crisis, and it is a real problem.
Yeah, I actually think I may have a clip of that particular issue, because I don't want people to miss what you're saying there, because this is reality, that those coming into our country illegally across the border are not required to have a vaccine, but those of us living, working, residents, citizens of this country are. Play clip number 1, please.
Requirement for people at a business with more than 100 people. It is not a requirement for migrants at the southern border. Why?
That's correct. Go ahead.
They don't want to talk about it. There seems to be, it's hard to explain what this administration is doing. And for the most part, when you look at how significant and big this problem is, as you just described, Congresswoman Hartzler, the media, the legacy media, seems to be giving this administration a pass.
Absolutely. It seems like there's only one network that's even covering this crisis and the 15,000 people right now under that bridge. And that is a true tragedy for our country. And it's endangering our citizens, endangering their health, endangering their livelihoods, and certainly their security, as we don't know who these individuals are. Plus, when I was there at the border a couple months ago, the Border Patrol had already confiscated as much drugs as they had in the entirety of last year. So we have record amounts of fentanyl and opioids and meth that the drug cartels are sneaking into our country, in addition to all of these illegal immigrants. So it is a real problem. We have had overdose records, unfortunately, last year of Americans. And this is only going to continue if we continue to allow these drugs to flow into our country and have an open border.
Congresswoman Vicki Hartzler, I hate that clock, because that means we're out of time, because we didn't even get to General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, defending his comments on Friday. Do you think he has some explaining to do to Congress?
Oh, absolutely. If it is found to be true that he talked to his counterpart in China, General Lee, and told him, if we are going to attack you, I will let you know. If that is true, he ought to resign immediately.
All right. Well, we're going to be watching this very closely as he testifies before Congress on the 28th of the month. Congresswoman Vicki Hartzler, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.